Coach Gene Clemons joins me today on the LockedOn Giants podcast. We're talking about every single pick. We're talking about how these draft picks might fit in and what we might be able to expect on offense and defense. That's coming up next on today's LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Trainer here with you. Thank you so much, everybody, for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And we are continuing our breakdown of the New York Giants' amazing 2022 draft haul. We have experts coming on. We've got the Locked On college hosts coming on to tell us specifically about the players. And of course, you all recognize this handsome gentleman alongside of me, Coach Gene Clemons. He's been writing for me over at Giants Country. He's got a new podcast out he's going to tell us about a little later on. And he is our X's and O's man over at Giants Country and a trusted X's and O's man here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Gene, thank you so much, as always, for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a very interesting, exciting draft for the Giants, and I'm assuming Giants fans. There's some interesting discussion points to get into about it, so I'm looking forward to going over it.
Absolutely. And Gene, we got to kick it off. You know, normally I would go down the list in order, but I have to start with probably one of the most quote unquote controversial picks in this draft. I think you know where I'm going with this one. Wan'Dale Robinson in round 2. A lot of Giant fans screaming about that pick, saying that the Giants reached for him. You know, what's up with that? You're a coach. You're a talent evaluator. What's with that pick? How do you think they might utilize Wan'Dale Robinson in the offense based on the history we know behind Kafka, the offensive coordinator, and Dable, the head coach?
Well, first off, I think people have to remember that there's a difference between reaching for a talent and reaching for a need. I believe that they reached for a need. I don't believe that they reached for a talent. The Wan'Dale Robinson is every bit of a phenomenal talent, and in a draft that may not have been so wide receiver rich as it was this year, could have possibly been a fringe first round draft pick. But because there were so many really good wide receivers, that made him a drop. And then it also makes people think that maybe he was taken too soon. And I think from my standpoint, the talent wasn't taken soon, but the need at taking him as a second round draft pick was probably too soon, because I believe, and I'll continue to bang the table, that they missed out on the opportunity to take a linebacker that could have been a premier guy inside, either in Mumma or Anderson, or even if you wanted to wait and get someone later, they could have still gotten Nakobe Dean late, and they missed out on all of those guys. I really believe that might be the miss of the draft in that second and maybe even into that third round. But I don't think that the pick of Robinson was necessarily a bad one. I just feel like it was a luxury pick. And in my opinion, this team isn't ready to be taking luxury picks yet. But we'll see. You got to give them the latitude to show that either, yeah, they know what they're talking about, or no, they don't.
But how could they potentially fit this guy in? Because, you know, everybody says, oh, they had Shep, they have Kadarius Toney, 2 slot receivers. Shep is, you know, coming off that Achilles injury. He may not be ready for the start of the season. You know, how do they potentially fit this guy in? Because look, let's face it, I don't know that a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson would have fit necessarily last year's coaching staff. I don't know if he would have fit maybe the Kevin Gilbride's staff. How does this guy fit in, you know, based again on what we know about Dable and Kafka and the offensive systems they come from?
Well, I think that anytime you get an opportunity to add an explosive receiver who has an ability to make people miss in short quarters, you can find a way to employ him. I think in this offense, if we're talking more of Actually, if we're talking more of Dable's offense, then you're probably thinking of him more like a Beasley type. But I think if you're looking at the elements of Kansas City's offense and how they use some of their really explosive, fast, oompa loompa wide receivers, I think that you might see him used in that same manner. A lot of jet sweeps and reverses and end arounds. A couple of those a game. Get him the ball quick on quick passes. Let him go to work. Use him on those short crossing routes where you can get the ball in his hands, where he has an opportunity to run after the catch, and then obviously using that explosiveness to get downfield to be able to stretch the field either for others to come underneath or to try to take advantage of him one-on-one. But I don't subscribe to they already have two slot receivers. Number one, Shepard can play on the outside as a Z. It's not as if he's never been out there before. Tony is a slot guy, but if you're going to run primarily, three receivers, one tight end into four receivers, then you'll have two slot guys out there, and putting Tony on one side and Robinson on the other side, if they choose to keep Tony, which is what I talked about in my article. If they decide to go on from Tony, then Robinson he falls directly into that position that Tony was in. But if they keep them, now you have two dynamic guys in the slot that defensive have to account for, and you can't account for either one of those guys with a linebacker. That is a matchup nightmare.
Which is what they could use more of, certainly. Now, here's something I also thought about regarding the addition of Robinson, who's kind of like, for a lack of a better term, a joystick, a gadget player. You could do things with him out of the backfield. The Giants didn't draft a running back, which I was kind of surprised. I thought they would, to get somebody ready, if nothing else, even if they put him on the practice squad. Is it possible that in this offense we could maybe see some formations where either Tony or Robinson line up in that backfield and, maybe some gadget plays like that?
I think you could. I think you could see stuff like that. But I think really they probably felt good about the guys that they had. And they added a guy who I said that they should definitely target in my mock draft, that I said that they should target in the 6th round, that they ended up getting as an undrafted free agent. I think that group gives you a developmental guy along with two guys who are established, and possibly whomever ends up being another guy. You usually want to have 4 in the fold at some point, but that gives you a developmental guy. But I think what we've seen from Dable's offense in Buffalo, they didn't put a ton of emphasis on the running back position. So if that's something that they do going into this Giants, you could see a lot more empty sets or sets with non-traditional people in the backfield, because they're going to be used as receivers. But I wouldn't discount the fact that they probably just feel really good about where Saquon is, and the fact that he's still not, it's not like he's old, So when people say getting someone ready for the future, it's like, well, you still have a 26-year-old Saquon Barkley, hanging around. It's not like you have a 28, 29, 34-year-old running back. But I think they feel good about that running back room, and they have to feel great about the undrafted free agents that they've been able to bring on so far.
Yeah, definitely. All right, now I got to ask you, because I found this kind of interesting. In the 3rd round, with their first 3rd round pick, they picked a guard, Izudu from North Carolina. Then they double dipped in North Carolina. They went back to, in the 5th round, the last of their 3 5th-round picks, they picked up Marcus McKeithen. What is it about that North Carolina offensive line that, would have made them double dip there, or was it just a matter of value?
I would have to assume that they liked something about the offense, the North Carolina offense, and how those guys played in that offense. I know what these do. His value is he is a tackle who is projected to be a guard at the next level. And so he gives positional value in the fact that he can be a he can be almost that swing guy, that sixth man that operates as a tackle and as a guard if you need someone, because we know on game days you don't dress a lot of offensive linemen. And so if you're only dressing 7 offensive linemen, the 2 offensive linemen who are the backups need to be able to play multiple positions. So with the Zudu, I think that's clearly, hey, we believe this guy could help us in a couple different places. Now with McKeithern, his value, I think, is more developmental. I think they're taking a guy. He's big. He's big. He's strong. He blocks out the sun. Could you imagine him, by the way, next to Neal? Like Neal and him, like him at right guard and Neal at right tackle. That might be the largest 2 dudes next to each other in all of the NFL. But I think that they look at him as a developmental piece. There's a good chance he doesn't even make the roster, that he ends up as somebody on the practice squad. I think he needs to get his weight under control, probably lose 20 to 25 pounds, get him somewhere closer to that 315 range, and 315, 320 range. That's going to help his mobility at the next level, which he'll definitely need. But to add a legitimate road grader like that in the late rounds, I think you're looking at value as opposed to, or developmental value as opposed to somebody that's going to help you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought that was unusual that they would go double dip from the same offensive line class, same school.
It tells you that they definitely probably had someone that they valued looking, in that area, and saw it. It just kind of probably fell that way on their board where those guys were available and the value matched up with what they had.
Yeah. All right. So I have been screaming now for a number of years about the Giants getting a Batman and Robin pass rushing duo. They took Kayvon Thibodeau in the first round with the first pick that they had, the first of 2 picks, pick number 5. I was surprised he was there, by the way. Do they now have a Batman and Robin, in your opinion? I think they do, and I think they even I even dare say they have a 3 deep minimum with their pass rushers.
Well, you know me, PT. I'm not going to jump off the bridge, and just be like, oh, they've got it. It's done. I think that they have addressed the need. They've legitimately addressed the need. And by the way, remember when we were talking about my draft, my mock draft, and how weird it was and how different it was? It seems a lot of that mock draft made a lot of sense. Just saying, I'm just telling you, Giants fans, you might want to listen to your boy.
I was praising your mock draft. You might want to listen
to your boy. Thank you very much. No, but I think that what they've added is they've added high motor guys. And quiet as it's kept, I think if Coughlin continues to develop, he becomes another guy that in situations gives you that high motor guy who just will relentlessly chase down things. So I think that they're in a great place. I like the addition of Thibodeau because there's a lot of Carter in him in the way he plays, except I believe he gives a lot more explosiveness than maybe Carter did. But the versatility that Carter brought with being able to line up as a legitimate option as a defensive end and take on these big giant offensive tackles was something you just can't rely on Azeez to be that guy. And so with Thibodeau, now you have the versatility that he can legitimately put his hand in the dirt, and now you can alleviate Azeez from having to do that, and he can be really more of a 2-point stance rush outside linebacker as opposed to a hybrid 43 defensive end when it's undersized with his hand in the dirt taking on tackles. So I do love that young combination that they have on the outside. I want to see how it looks. I want to see how they employ all of these pieces. Will we see both of them on the field all the time together? Will it only be on pass rushing situations that we see both of them on the field together? If there is pass rushing situations, who's coming off the field? How do they work through the interior defensive line? I think that's all some things that I want to see. But I do like the fact that they've legitimately addressed the need at pass rusher. We've said that they needed to get more dynamic at the position. Over the last 2 drafts, they've been able to get more dynamic at the position, and that's only going to serve that defense well.
And already, it's funny, some people, I think I read something yesterday, Harry Carson, the great Hall of Fame Giants linebacker, says Thibodeau's swagger, if you will, kind of reminds him of a young Lawrence Taylor. Now, we could only hope that Thibodeau has the type of career Lawrence Taylor had. I mean, we're talking the best to ever play the game.
We can only hope that it's only his swagger and his play that's Lawrence Taylor like, because Lawrence Taylor would never survive in today's NFL.
Oh, yeah.
They would have gotten him out of the paint so fast. Like it's different. So let's hope that the swagger in the game, the on-field game, is the same, and that's it. Because the rest of it's probably a little bit too much to be handled right now.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, Mother's Day is this Sunday. And, you can give mom something really special that she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. LockedOn Sports listeners get $50 off $500. And this podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. So use code LockedOn. That's code LockedOn at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile offers a diverse selection of rings, bracelets, earrings, necklaces, all kinds of jewelry. So you're sure to find something special to celebrate that special event with that special someone in your life. Every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free. Pick up your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com and remember that promo code LOCKEDON to save $50 off your order of $500 or more. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball. They got a right tackle. And a guy who, in Evan Neal, has position flexibility. He can move inside to guard if you need him to. I don't think that's his best position. I don't think that's a position they're even thinking about for him. But the important thing is it looks like they've got bookends now with Andrew Thomas at left tackle and Evan Neal at right tackle. When you look at that pick, I mean, I think tremendous value, even though Neal was one of the top 3 offensive tackles there, just the versatility. And that's what always kept attracting him, to me when I did my mock draft. What do you think of that pick?
It's a great pick. I think they couldn't go wrong either way that they went. I said going into the draft that I thought Ekwonu was the best run blocking offensive tackle. I thought that Neal was the most balanced of the 3, and so when Ekwonu left, and he went, I wasn't surprised that Neal was the pick. Would he have been my pick? I'm still not sure, but it's a great pick. I don't think you can go wrong. I've never seen an Alabama offensive lineman be a bust, and so I think this is really undersold. Neal has had pressure on him to be great from the time he was in high school. And so he's always lived up to the hype. In high school, he went down to IMG. IMG is a place that has become like a football factory. If you go there, that's because they think you're going to be playing on Sundays one day. And he lived up to the hype. He was the number 1 player in the country. Then he goes to Alabama, and from the moment he steps foot on Alabama, he's a starter. And he's playing in national championship games every year. And he's always lived up to the hype. He lived up to the hype as a guard his freshman year. He lived up to the hype as the right tackle his sophomore year. And he lived up to the hype as a left tackle his junior year. I mean, when you think about how he's been able to always rise to the occasion, You have to love it. In my opinion, probably one of the most unbustable picks that you could have taken in the draft. And so when you get someone like that, obviously now knowing that his best position is most likely right tackle, you don't even have to have the conversation about Andrew Thomas possibly moving over to right tackle, which I think would have been a legitimate conversation had the Giants drafted Cross instead of Neal, because I believe Cross is the best pass blocking tackle in here, and probably has been the best pass blocking tackle over the last 2 drafts. So it would be interesting if that happens. But now we don't have to worry about that. Let Andrew Thomas rock at left tackle. Let Neal rock at right tackle. If somebody gets hurt on the interior and you have another guy that you feel comfortable with plugging in at right tackle, Neal could move inside and show you up there. So I think it's a win-win all around for all parties involved.
Yeah, I really like that pick. I love the first round. I mean, gosh, that was a dream scenario for them.
What's not to love? Although I think if we wanna offer some whatever, how could you mess that up? Like, it would be almost impossible to mess that up.
Yeah,
so
you couldn't.
Kayvon Thibodeau fell to them. Like, nobody thought he was going to be there at 5. He ends up there at 5. To me, that, especially the fact that both cornerbacks were gone, he ended up there at 5 with no elite cornerback still on the board at that point. So it made it so much easier to just say, okay, yeah, we're going to take, Thibodeau, because we know we're going to get one of the tackles at 7. So it became almost elementary.
Yeah.
Now, after the first round, we've got some conversations we could have.
Well, we're going to continue having those conversations. And actually, let me go to a head scratcher for me. And that was the second of the third round picks, Cordell Flott out of LSU. Now, he was productive at LSU. I know that the Tigers maybe weren't as strong of a team as they've been in the past, but he was good when he had to step in when guys were getting injured. But still, this guy's kind of you look at his measurables and they scream slot cornerback. And for third round pick, to pick a guy who's that slender, I mean, that was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. But so what am I missing then?
I would just tell you, it doesn't scream slot cornerback for me, because now in the slot you've got to be physical. He's not that. Like, he's 100, and if he was really 170 pounds, I'd be surprised. Like, he is really small, and his frame is not a frame that's going to all of a sudden put on 25 pounds. He's going to probably be a slightly built defensive back his entire career for as long as it lasts. I'll tell you the one thing that you never can discount is you never can discount competition. And he's played against the best competition in college. He plays in the SEC West, which means he has to see Alabama, he has to see Texas A&M, he has to see Mississippi State, he has to see Ole Miss, all teams that throw the ball all over the place. He's had to stand up against that level of pressure. He was on that national championship team. And so he understands, like, the pressure that comes with being on a national championship team on a national stage, and the pedigree of playing at a program like LSU. But I 100% believe that it was not only a reach. I believe it was a flat out miss by the Giants, and it has nothing to do with Flott. He may come in and be a good, productive defensive back in the NFL, but they had guys on the board that have measurables that normally never get passed up, and legitimately got passed up. And I just don't understand it for the life of me.
And then the other, speaking of cornerback, I mean, as we record this, James Bradberry is still on the roster. It looks like they're trying to do something to keep him. That being said, if they do end up moving him, it's been mentioned that Aaron Robinson, last year's, what was he, the third round pick, I believe, that he might step in and fill that spot. I mean, is that a legitimate solution to you? I mean, Robinson played slot mostly when he was in college, but certainly he has the size and the physicality to play the position, I would think.
Well, I mean, if you're bringing in, if you're going to be more dynamic in your defense, a lot of these guys are just going to move around all over the place. So whether you're in a slot, whether you're outside, it's not really going to matter. It's not going to be a situation where someone's playing one position only the entire time. Like, they're going to be moving around. The pieces will be changing because part of the allure of the defense is keeping people off, off guard, keeping them off balance. The only way I would say it's a legitimate replacement is if someone's seen something in him that says he can be the starting cornerback. I don't know if I see it, but I'm not in there every day. I don't see how he's working. So we have to believe the people that get a chance to see him every single day. I just know that for me, I think that the opportunity to add a plus level measurables, guys who are tall, who are strong, who are super athletic. I mean, 4'2", 40 guys, 4'3", 40 guys that they left on the board in the third round. Normally, you just do not see teams pass up that level of athleticism in the measurables once you get past the second round. And to watch them pass up these 6'2" and 6'3" cornerbacks and 6'4" cornerbacks that are running 4.28s and 4.2 whatevers to go for a guy who is a decent athlete, slender built. Like, I was surprised. And so it tells me maybe they have some plan in place. And I believe that plan is James Bradberry is not going anywhere. I know everyone wants him gone, but I don't think he's going anywhere. And good for them, because you don't get better getting rid of good talent.
Well, you do have to get rid of that cap number, though. You have to do something with it. You cannot carry that.
We will keep on arguing over it, and that's fine. But I still contend when you see the way that the Giants have handled business with head coaches, you don't have 4 and 5 years to get this thing right. You need to get this thing right sooner rather than later in order to give yourself some type of job security. And that's not going to come putting a marginal third-round draft pick out there from last year or a marginal third-round draft pick from this year to go and deal with the likes of the receivers that we've seen all of these NFC East teams load up with. That's just, I mean, it's going to be a dogfight out there. These other teams in the NFC East have legitimate monsters at wide receiver, not just some kind of sort of good wide receivers. They have monsters at wide receiver, and you need a guy who's used to going up against monsters, and you already have that guy. That guy's you're not going to find that guy on the free agency. You're not going to find that guy hanging around the undrafted free agents. You're not going to find that guy on your roster outside of him, because if you did, this wouldn't even be a conversation right now. Yeah. It'd already be gone. I know that something has to be done with the cap number.
Right.
That ain't my concern. My concern is with these players. We'll let the people who have to deal with the cap deal with the cap.
Yeah, and I've had some people ask me about that, with the cap. Why wouldn't he take a pay cut? And my response is would you take a pay cut if you were still performing and you knew that your company mismanaged their payroll budget? I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so. It's hard. Like to go to Bradberry and tell him that he should take less money purposely when he hasn't done anything to warrant less money. Right. That makes no sense.
Exactly.
If anything, trade him, take your chances with whomever you have, and when it's bad, I don't want to hear Giants fans, well, we're so bad in the secondary. Listen, you guys said you had to get rid of them because the cap number was too big, right? So you can't have your cake and eat it too. At some point, you gotta pay the piper. And It's time to pay the piper. They need to call up, what they need to do? They need to call up New Orleans and figure out how New Orleans is able to do this every single year when their cap number is atrocious every single year, and they still find ways to add more talent. I don't know how they've done it, but it is applaudable.
It's a fascinating study. I might do an article on that, actually. I might, because I do the cap stuff a lot.
Yeah,
I might take a look at that. That might be a worthwhile read. I mean, I know how Buffalo has done some of their bigger contracts, and I can't wait to see them do that stuff here with the Giants, with structured guarantees and all that stuff. But I'll have to check that out. That's definitely a study for somebody who's into the cap like I am. All right,
Absolutely.
let's get back to the draft. We got a couple more guys I want to talk about. Tight end Daniel Bellinger. All right, now the Giants have completely made over that tight end room rather. Ricky Seals-Jones added, Jordan Akins added. They have a couple of other guys, but how do you kind of see that role playing out? Because I thought that Dable might want to get a guy who was an H-back in here. That's kind of why they went away from the fullback. Who do you think might play that H-back role, and what do you think of the addition of Bellinger?
Again, I was a little bit confused at the addition of Bellinger because he's a run blocking tight end. Like he's a Y. He's a legitimate Y. He's a run blocking tight end. He comes from a running offense, and that's where his major bread is buttered. I think he has a little plus in play action, being able to operate in play action because he's used to doing that type of stuff. But he's not Dawson Knox, because Dawson Knox can't block. I don't understand why people have been saying it. Like Dawson Knox is not a blocker. Like stop that. But he doesn't fill any of those spaces that the head coach or the offensive coordinator have come from. And there were guys out there like Isaiah Likely, who I thought would have been a great addition. There's a couple other guys who I thought would have been good. Obviously, McBride went a little bit earlier, so that might not have been in their plans to take a tight end earlier than that. But I think what happened is that they wanted Cade Otton. I think Cade Otton was who they wanted, who is a legitimate Y, who has plus value as a receiving tight end. Mm-hmm. And I think that they wanted a guy who could be a legitimate run blocker, but also give you something as a pass receiver. And to me, that the one person that was tailor-made for that was Cade Otton. And then you had the next guy up. And so once Otton was gone, and I believe he went a few spots ahead of them to Tampa Bay, I think that they fell back to whoever that second guy was and probably reached for a dude that they may have been able to get another round down the way. But it tells me that they're definitely looking to put emphasis into the run game and blocking in the run game, because that's exactly what he's going to be able to bring to the table.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess they don't really have an H-back on this roster. Can maybe this Akins guy, a veteran, do it? I mean, Ricky Seals-Jones is not a receiver, right?
Well, I think Akins and Ricky Seals-Jones are both that kind of guy because they're both not natural tight ends. Both of them are wide receiver converts. Ricky Seals-Jones is a receiver at Texas A&M. And Akins was a receiver at UCF before he transitioned to tight end. So both of those guys are receivers. The problem is neither one of them were ever really explosive. So it's not like they have that twitchy H-back explosiveness that you normally would see out of a guy. But I think both of them could exist in that world. They're probably better at H-back than they are at tight end because neither one of them are phenomenal blockers. Although I do have to give Ricky Seals-Jones his credit. He has really worked at being a better inline blocker, and it's shown. And I think that's why he's been able to find some staying power in the NFL.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, and they taste great. Built Bar offers 9 amazing flavors in nut and nut-free variety, plus a rotating limited-time offering of different flavors that changes up every so many weeks. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today and see what their current flavor lineup looks like, and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. Again, that's code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Catalyst Power are partners with you or your trusted energy consultant to produce a power supply plan that fits your business and your market risk tolerance. They have a suite of options customizable to your business's needs, including options that bundle with or focus on renewable energy. Right now in New York, they're offering an on-site solar solution for your business that requires zero installation, maintenance, or material purchase costs. That's right, no capital expense costs for you. To sweeten the deal, qualified businesses could be eligible for up to 6 months of at-cost energy supply from Catalyst Power. Go to catalystpower.com/lockedongiants to learn more. All right, now let's wrap things up with the bottom part of the draft where they mostly went defense from pick number 146 down to 182. They only had the one offensive player at 173, that was McKeithen, but they picked up two linebackers, Micah McFadden out of Indiana, Darian Beavers with the sixth-round pick, number 182 out of Cincinnati, and they picked up a defensive tackle, I guess a nose guard here, in DJ Davidson from Arizona State. Let's start with Davidson, and then we'll talk about the linebackers. Davidson, the scouting report I saw on him, nose guard, which I know you said they absolutely needed. Can he do anything else? I mean, can he also line up as maybe the 1 or the 3?
Well, I think with a nose guard, you can always line up as one technique because that's just a shade over into a gap. But I don't think he offers any position flexibility other than as a nose guard. I wasn't wild about the selection of the person. I did believe that they needed to address nose guard because they have depth everywhere else, but they don't have a lot of depth at a guy who is a legitimate two-gap plugger in the middle outside of Ellis. And so with Ellis, now you bring in another guy who can be a legitimate two-gap plugger. He has some plus ability. He's strong. He's got a nice strong low anchor to him. I really would have liked the other Ellis out of Idaho over him. I thought he was probably the best pure nose guard in the draft. But I think that they addressed the need. And again, we've got to wait and just see, hey, are they getting guys that they really believe work in the system that they're in? Or did they throw some darts at some positions and say, hey, we need a nose guard. Who's out there? Okay, let's take that guy.
I think we might see Dexter Lawrence play some nose guard this year. I would not be, I don't understand why they haven't done it sooner, but I would not be surprised if Dexter Lawrence on some packages moves over and plays that nose guard position. So maybe that was the thought, and they maybe look at this kid Davidson as a developmental prospect, which a lot of day 3 picks are, if you think about it, especially the lower you come down in the draft.
Yeah, and I think that Lawrence doing more inside work will be predicated on pass rushing situations. Like, you're not going to have Ellis out there. You're not going to have this kid out here at nose when you want on an obvious passing down, because that's just not what they do. They are legitimate run pluggers. They're 2-down type of defensive tackles. I would love to see them use Lawrence more inside. Especially if Lawrence is dedicated to being a disruptor on the inside, like he should be. And so maybe in the past they didn't feel as if they had enough depth to do that, someone else to be able to anchor down at that 4 technique out there. But I think they have that now. I think that they can put some things together that works. And so I would love to see Lawrence kick down into the nose, especially on obvious passing downs, and rush the passer from inside.
All right, now these two linebackers. You mentioned you were surprised they didn't go linebacker a little earlier in the draft. So they picked up McFadden in the 5th round, number 146, and Beavers 182 out of Cincinnati. The McFadden pick to me is intriguing. The Beavers pick, I'm not so sure. I know a whole lot about him. I got to do a little bit more work on him. But what did you think of these two picks, and how does this impact what they already have at that inside linebacker spot?
I think they're two great developmental picks. I think McFadden is also a great special teams pick. I think that they're bargain versions of what they could have had. McFadden is in a similar mode as a Mumma, as an Anderson, but not as athletic, not as productive, not as explosive. But he does have a nose for the ball, and he understands how to get to the ball. He's been able to swallow up a lot of tackles that way. And he seems to be really adept at blitzing. I don't think he's a guy you're going to see in coverage. He's not a coverage guy, but he does have an ability to find the open hole when blitzing. And so as an interior second level blitzer, I believe he brings some value to the table. Had back-to-back seasons of 6.5 sacks for Indiana. But as far as the complete game of the new age inside linebacker, he doesn't have that same level as you would have been able to get from some of these other linebackers like Dean, Anderson, Mumma, Walker, and some of the other guys who went ahead of them at that position. With Beavers, it's really interesting because I don't know what positions he's going to play. He's a legitimate like box linebacker. Like he's a B. I wouldn't even necessarily say box. He's probably like a more of a B gap to B gap linebacker. He's not going to have the foot speed to be able to consistently play. So he might be a guy that you see them kick back outside. He started his career at UConn at defensive end. So there's a chance that you see him back outside as as an edge guy, a guy who can give you something in that manner, or inside in obvious run situations, or in a situation where he might be rushing from the interior. But neither one of those guys you're going to see being asked to like drop into coverage and cover people, because that's just not what they do well. And I think that the one thing this coaching staff is going to have to be smart about is using people in the positions that bring out the best in them and not putting them in positions to be taken advantage of.
All right, so Coach Gene, I'm not going to ask you to grade this class because I don't think that would be fair. We need to see them on the field. We need to get about 3 years worth of game film on these guys. That said, when you look at what the Giants did, the strategy, which I think has become a little bit more obvious as to what their plan was, what are your thoughts overall on this draft class?
I thought overall they did a solid job. First round, I believe, was a home run. A grand slam home run. I think from there, and I think I talked about it, they hit a lot of singles. Not necessarily any, real big moves. I think that they got a lot of depth. I think they've got a lot of guys who possibly can develop. And we didn't even really talk about the second round pick. Was the second round? Oh no, the first third round pick, the safety.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. I'm sorry.
Whom I actually think gives them some real good like versatility, because he's a guy who has great ball skills and he's used to playing as a second level safety, so he can be more adept at taking on the run, and he's able to cover tight ends. But overall, I think that they were solid. Almost as if they were trying not to go too crazy or outlandish, or maybe they had a plan in place that they didn't want to adjust once they kind of made the move over here to New York. I'm not sure. I think that it's telling, and this isn't abnormal to see, scouting department kind of turnover after the draft. That's usually where you see it happen. But I think it is telling that such prominent names were let go, because at the end of the day, maybe there were some differences that were had, but not enough time to flush out what should be done. So they just had to trust what their people had come up with. But I think that when we're looking at this draft 3 years from now, I can tell you for certain that 2 guys will still be on this team.
We know
everybody else. I have no idea. It's really going to be how they develop.
Since you brought up the safety, just real quick, the Giants are still kind of thin at safety, but so 2-part question, and then we'll let you talk about your new podcast. What does this safety Dane Belton bring? And again, they're still kind of thin at the position. So right now, is there somebody out there on the market that you think might be added to the safety spot?
Possibly. I'm not sure exactly exactly who's out there. I mean, we just saw, the Honey Badgers sign with New Orleans. But I think that Belton is a guy who can come in and give you minutes right now. He can come in and play snaps for you right now. By the way, shout out to Belton and McFadden, both Tampa guys. So shout out to Tampa. But I think with Belton, what you really have to like is the ball skills, and the ability to read and decipher route combinations especially in zone coverage. And then his frame being a bigger, stronger safety, he can come down and guard and cover tight ends. That's going to be big in a defense that we will probably see a lot of man-to-man happen with all of the exotic blitzes that's going on. And then you're going to have a guy who's used to getting into the box and getting his nose dirty. And I think that he's able to do that, very similar to what Logan Ryan had to do, being one of the leading tacklers on the team.
Yeah, I think safety is still a position. Although I started looking, I couldn't really find anybody that I think, would come at a reasonable cost. I think running back, I could see them maybe adding there if they want to add some veteran depth. Wayne Gallman comes to mind. I'd love to see them bring Wayne Gallman back. I think they might be able to get him on a cost-effective deal, but still some work to be done on the roster. And, folks, I know a lot of you have asked me about the UDFAs. The list isn't finalized yet, so I'm kind of waiting on that list. But once we get it, Coach Gene, he's going to be all over it over at Giants Country, as he always is. He does a great job. If you haven't checked his workout, go over, check it out. You're missing some great stuff here. And Coach Gene, tell everybody about the new podcast that you just launched.
Well, just launched a new webcast on my YouTube channel, Coach Gene Clemons. It'll be airing every Monday at 6:00. A Giant issue. A little play on words, where we talk about all of the recent happenings with the Giants. It'll be the place where you can find my game recaps once we get into the season, but an opportunity to really just kind of talk about some of the things that are Giants related. I don't really do the whole gossip or tabloidy thing. I'll leave that to everyone else that does that. But if you want to, talk football and possibly see some good interviews with some guys, I'm going to really start reaching out to, especially some of our younger players on the team, to possibly see about getting them on and just talking some football, talking ball. It'll be a great place to go and check that out. So please, if you get a chance, come check me out. If you like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Coach Gene Clemons, and that'll just be a part of the more concerted effort to kind of consolidate my Giant-specific content into one area. So you'll see it on the YouTube channel. It'll say New York Giants on it. That's where you'll find all of the breakdowns, the good, great, uglies that I do. Any type of video breakdowns or works that I do for Giants, it'll be on that YouTube channel as well. So trying to be more specific. I've appreciated all of the love that I've gotten from Giants fans so far, and want to be able to give them a little bit more of me and what I bring to the table, not just as a writer, but as a voice that follows the team, because that's what we love to do.
And of course, you'll always be welcome on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
Absolutely.
You're a regular now on Giants Country, doing a great job. A lot of people, contact me and they love your stuff. And I appreciate the stuff you do as well. I mean, you were probably right up there with me cranking stuff out over draft weekend, and that was quite an experience.
Oh, no, that's been fun.
It was fun, but it was a lot of work, and we were both exhausted after that three-day weekend.
That Saturday was my fingers need a little break after.
I needed a break too. I actually
Saturday.
went out. I actually said, okay, I'm going out for a couple of hours. I went out to dinner and I just needed to sit and do something else. But it was worth it. It was worth it. We do it for you, Giant fans, because we love you. We appreciate you. And, don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube here, please like and subscribe to the channel. Want to get to 5,000 subscribers so I can do my giveaway. Come on, let's do this, guys. Let's do this. And also, if you listen to us over on any of our audio platforms, if you could give us a 5-star review, that is appreciated as well. We've got so much more content coming up on the draft class. We've got Locked On college hosts that are going to be coming on. Rick Saratella is going to be on with us. David Turner is going to pop on. So much more. You do not want to miss it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Appreciate you, Giant fans. We will talk to you again tomorrow.